and he said 15 words changed everything for my dad. These 15 words. Now I'm going to pause here for just a second, and all of this applies to you. What 15 words have changed your life in the past?
The number is how many times they've done it. And Billy Crystal, and so when you think about Bob Hope, 28 times. Well, one of the things you need to think of is, why is a host so important? And it's important to keep things moving on, to make you feel welcome and ensure that the event gives you amazing value. And that's why this year, in Joe's sabbatical, Tim Paulson has been selected to be our Academy Award host, which is the equivalent. Except, of course, we don't have any awards and we don't have any silly people singing. Why Timothy and no one else? 4 words. 4 words about Timothy. I'm going to give you the words and then I'm going to explain why he was picked to do this. The 4 words are longevity, charisma, structure, and spirituality. Let's take longevity. Tim has worked with Joe Polish for over 20 years. He co-authored their best-selling marketing program, which Nightingale Conant produced, and it helped Joe grow his business for 2 decades. Now, speaking of longevity, Tim has been married to his wife, Kay, for 38 years. They have 5 kids and 10 grandkids. That's a lot of kids. Second, the word charisma. And if you've been in Genius Network this year, you have seen virtually every meeting begin with his kind, magnetic personality, his high energy, his caring for people, and of course, how he embraces you even on the screen. Third, structure. Tim knows how to put words together and ideas together. He has authored the book Love and Grow Rich, subtitled How to Love Your Way to Life and Riches, and he recently authored another book, Totally X, The Art of Becoming All That God Created You to Be. And then there's that 4th word, spirituality, which we don't often hear much about at Genius Network. So if you believe in God, you know that Timothy is really a gift from God. He holds a divinity degree and is a master's of divinity degree and is currently in a doctorate program of ministry at Emory University. He is retiring from business and Genius Network February 22nd, 2022. That's 2-2-2-2-2-2. He must love 2s. So that's 90 days from today, exactly. And then he's going to focus his effort on his own ministry. And he's going to merge art and theology to help people become the best versions of themselves, all because of those 4 wonderful qualities Tim possesses. Timothy is your host for this annual event, and he's going to share with you Joe Polish Exposed, peeking behind the curtain to discover Joe's secret blueprint. Timothy, come on out.
Thank you, Dad. Thank you. Thank you, Joel.
Love you, guys.
Thank you. I love you. My goodness. Thank you. Oh, good. Thank you. Wow. Let's see how you feel after, right? 2/22/22. That's my 60th birthday. I'm retiring. I've been in business 40 years. The next 40 years are going to be ministry. When I hit 100, Dan, we'll decide what I'm going to do after that, all right? So, and Joe Polish is on sabbatical. This is an interesting combination. So, hey, what's up? Joe Polish is on sabbatical. I'm retiring. I can say anything I want about Joe. I'm leaving anyway, right? And he's not going to hear it anyway. Joe Polish Exposed. Now, I should have asked permission. But I'm going to show you some pictures. Would you like to see some pictures of Joe? Yeah. Now, he may not appreciate my sharing these, but he's not here while the cat's away. We're going to play, right? All right, here's the first one. Are you ready? There it is. Isn't he cute? He's kind of a cute little baby.
What happened?
What in the heck happened? Why did that go off? Did I push the wrong thing?
There you go.
Oh dear, here we go. All right. Rakeem's going to come out here again and fix something, I think. Anyway, there's another picture. Here we go. Let me try to go. How do you go back? I don't know how you go back. That last picture was Joe doing a goofy face. Here's Joe as a dead broke carpet cleaner with a long ponytail. Okay, so these are pictures of Joe. Oh my gosh, I had to go into the archives. Joe went to college, Chandler Gilbert College, junior college. And he has a report card, and I'm going to show you his report card. Now, maybe I should have asked permission to show this to you, but here it is. Interpersonal communication, a B. Principles of marketing, a C. Owning and operating a small business, an F. This is the guy we look to, right? So maybe I should have asked permission, who knows. Now, I've worked with Joe for 20 years, as Joel said. And you see in this picture, that's me, and that's Joe when we were younger and moderately handsome. Moderately handsome. He's about to give away a car to a winner of his contest, Better Your Best contest. So I've worked with Joe for a long time. And so I've been exposed to a lot of stuff. Can you imagine? I mean, working that closely with Joe for 20 years, the things that I've heard, the things that I've seen, the things that I've experienced. It's, like 20 years. Some people say, well, that's like 140 years in dog years. I don't know what that means. But anyway, all right, here we are. The Joe Polish Success Blueprint. It's framed in 5.5 principles. So that's what I'm going to share with you. By the end of this presentation, 3 things. You'll have 3 things. Number 1, you'll know Joe's success blueprint. That's what you'll know. Number 2, you'll have the 5.5 principles to apply to your life and your business and to the next 2 days. Okay? And then you'll feel empowered to get the most out of the Genius Network annual event and beyond. Okay? So that's what you'll know, that's what you'll have, that's what you'll feel. All right. Now, you have, everybody here in your folder, you have this handout. You don't need to do too much with that. It's just, I've got 4 of the principles written. We'll fill in a 5.5 principle later. You online, oh, by the way, hello everyone out there. It is so good to be with you. I'm usually online. I'm here live now, and this is just a wonderful, wonderful time. So, there it is. There's principles. There's just a little place for you to note, maybe a note or 2. I'm not suggesting you're taking copious note during this presentation, but fill out a little something here and there when you feel inspired to. Okay, Susan, are you with me?
I'm with you.
Okay, good. Susan's with me. This isn't really about Joe Polish. This is really about you. We could all tell Joe Polish stories, right? But it's like, okay, what does this mean to you? Because it's all about you, how you can implement this. I'm illustrating the 5.5 Joe Polish success principles through art and personal stories. So I'm an artist. I love art. This is how I'm framing this. Hi, Maria. Nice to see you. This is how I'm framing this. You might frame it differently. You might even present different principles than I'm presenting. But this is the frame. So I'm going to tell you stories. Again, each story is about other people, but it's about you. So, principle number 1, go to the master. So my dad is the artist whom you have seen in the United States for 32 years on television. You're going through the channels. This has happened to you. Hey, Brother Strong. It's happened to you, right? You're going through the channels and you see an artist and he's painting and you stop and you watch for a few minutes. Well, that's my dad. Now, I know what you're thinking. His dad's Bob Ross? I wish you could see that better, but you can see Bob Ross. No, that's Bob Ross. He's the guy with the afro. My dad's the other guy. That's Buck Paulson. And he's been on for a lot of years. He's still on. He's 87 years old. He still paints brilliantly. So that's my dad. All right, now, full-time professional artist for 51 years now. But he wasn't always an artist. I had the opportunity of growing up. That's little Timothy painting. That painting would be worth something today if we had it, right? But I was raised with a paintbrush in my hand, so I love art and I frame things in art. So my dad started out, he's 17 years old in this picture. He signed his first professional contract with the Fargo-Moorhead Twins. Anybody ever heard of the Fargo-Moorhead Twins? Now, Dan, you're from Northern Ohio. They were a minor league team for the Cleveland Indians way back in the 50s. So my dad's a professional baseball player. And he played in 2 or 3 different minor league teams. And then he served in the Army, he went to school, got a degree in physical education, married my mother, best thing he ever did. And then he moved to this place, Santa Barbara, California. He was really smart to marry a girl from Santa Barbara because my dad was from Minnesota. No offense to anybody from Minnesota, but they made a really good choice, didn't they? Now, my dad had his dream job. Think about this. He was a professional baseball player. Professional baseball player, and got a physical education degree from college, and he got his dream job. It was supervisor of the recreation department in Santa Barbara. He could play all day. It was his dream job.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this video, and I want to let you know that I have a new book that's come out, and if you'd like to get it absolutely free, there's a link below in the description, or you can wait till the end of this video, or you can simply go to joesfreebook.com and you can get a copy there.
2 weeks into his dream job, he's walking down the street and he saw something like this. He saw a guy set up on an easel, he's painting. So my dad, it's literally 2 weeks, March of 1962, he's walking down the street, he sees this guy, he stops and he starts admiring his work. The next day, my dad goes to lunch, he's walking down the street, he sees the same guy and he takes a look and he watches and he goes, wow. The next day, he does the same thing. And then he goes home to my mom. Now, he called her Tweet, still does call her Tweet. That's short for sweetheart. He goes, Tweet, I think I want to be an artist. I think that's what I want to do. Now, if you knew my dad, you would say this guy is the least likely person to be an artist. He took one art class in his life and he got a D. It was in junior high school, got a D grade. He can't even match his clothes to this day. The least likely, he was a jock. There's no way in the world this guy was likely. You wouldn't choose him. Is that Guy back there? Guy, hi Guy. Guy from Canada. He was the least likely guy to do this. So my mom says, well, you know, it's March, your birthday's in August, I'll buy you an art set in August. No way. My dad went right out, bought an art set. He got a paper towel, he went to the kitchen table, and he painted this. So years later, my older sister, Dondi, she was probably 8, she said, Dad, how old were you when you painted that painting? How old do you think I was? 3? He was 28 years old. That was his first attempt. But oh my God, now think about this. He goes to Tweet, and he says, Tweet, I want to be an artist, and he paints this. And she's thinking, well, we got 3 kids at home, and we're just trying to make ends meet. And, you know, you want to be an artist. I've heard of starving artists before, right? But anyway, my dad said, okay, I'm going to go take lessons. So he went to adult education classes. And he started taking classes, and he's an artist, and wanting to become an artist. He's a baseball player, so he painted this. This is his first sports art. So it's like the same guy in the batting circle, and then the batter. And so you look at that. Tweet, what do you think of that? Tweet, I want to be an artist. Tweet. Oh, that's nice, right? So anyway, my dad goes into an art store, and he speaks to the person who's working there. Her name was Kitty West. And my dad expressed, I want to become a great artist. I mean, that's my future. That's really where my heart is. I've got a passion for this. And he said, I'm going to adult education classes, so that's where I'm going. Hey, Mike, good to see you. Good to see you, Mike. Kitty West said something at that point that totally changed the trajectory of my dad's life. She said, here it is. If you want to become a great artist, go to the master. She said, don't waste your time over at that adult education class. Don't waste your time. Go to the master. Now, she was referring to this person right here. This is a self-portrait. Where's Susan Poget? Susan, she and I both love art, right? But Claude Buck was his name. New York artist, is a child prodigy. I could tell you all stories about him. Once recognized as one of the 100 greatest living American artists. Brilliant artist, taught at the Art Institute of Chicago. He moved to Santa Barbara like a year before this, in 1961. And Kitty said, Claude Buck moved to Santa Barbara. I don't know if he gives lessons, but if you want to become a great artist, go to the master. Well, where can I find him? My dad drove right over to 512 North Milpas Street, knocked on the door. Claude's wife opened the door, directed him to the back of the house. My dad goes back there. And here's my dad on the right. Here's Claude on the left. This was taken sometime later. But my dad went up to Claude. So Claude's 72 years old. My dad's 28 years old. And my dad starts talking to him and said, I don't know anything about art, but I would like to become a great artist. And Claude talked to him for a few minutes. And he said 15 words changed everything for my dad. These 15 words. Now I'm going to pause here for just a second, and all of this applies to you. What 15 words have changed your life in the past? What is something that somebody said that it was like, oh my gosh, that was oh my gosh, it went right to my heart? And what about the next 2 days? What will someone say here that will go to your heart? It has that type of potential for changing our lives. But here it is. So Claude Buck, my dad's talking to him, and he says this, let's see if we can make a great artist out of you in a year. Now, wait a second. Why in the world would Claude Buck? Now, a couple things. Claude Buck did not ask for my dad's resume. He didn't ask for a sample of his work. He didn't ask him what he studied in college. He didn't ask him anything. Devang, it's nice to see you. Didn't ask him anything. So why could Claude Buck say that to a guy who was not even close to being an artist yet? How could he say that? Anybody? What did he see in my dad? Yes.
The passion of that he would be willing to do whatever it took to be great.
Rosalind, very good. I'm going to repeat that. The passion, right? Whatever it took. You saw that in my dad. Now that's instructive. What do you have a passion for? And what looks impossible, but really is possible. So Claude Buck, let's see if we can make a great artist out of you in a year. Now I'm going to show you this again. So this is the painting that my dad did at adult education. I'm going to show you the next painting, or the next picture. It's a painting. And it is the very first painting that my dad did entirely by himself. Before this, Claude always added strokes to his painting. The first painting my dad ever did entirely by himself after receiving lessons from Claude Buck, it's sports art. See if you can see any difference. Whoops, I went backwards. See if you can see any difference. Now, if I knew how to go backwards, I'd show you that again, the contrast. But this is called the Hall of Fame, and it is a family, our family loves this painting. But you see the difference, don't you? Going to adult education, going to the master. When have you gone to the master in your life? So my dad, here's on the cover of magazines. He's the king of the high seas. He paints these beautiful seascapes. You see him here. Whoops. Anyway, he was on 2 or 3 other pictures, but let me show this. So Joe Polish's success. What does this have to do with Joe Polish's success? So how could Joe go from the equivalent, like the first attempt, how could he go from that to, and this, that's the picture I wanted to show you earlier, and this, or to this? How did he get from there to here? 5.5 principles, right? But the first, now look at this. This picture is of a boot camp. 500 carpet cleaners coming from all over the world. They flocked him. They just, every word that Joe spoke, he was just like, they were taking it in. How can he go from there to here? How could he go from there to Running Genius Network and 100K group? How did this happen? Joe went to the master. Remember this report card? What did he get in in marketing? Got a C. Joe needed to go to the master. Who is this? Gary Halbert. Thank you, Gina. Gary Halbert says right over here, any problem in the world can be solved with the right sales letter. Gary Halbert. Joe met Gary Halbert. They became very, very good friends. Gary Halbert was one of the greatest copywriters in the world. Joe learned copywriting and marketing. He went to the master. Then he met this guy. Who's this? Okay, good. Dan Kennedy. And they became very, very good friends. Joe hired Dan on many occasions. He learned marketing. He went to the masters because he got a C in marketing. He didn't have a clue. He was a dead broke carpet cleaner until he went to the masters. Now, what grade did he, whoops, oh shoot. I wish you could see that. But anyway, what grade did he get in running a small business? An F. Now, if I were to ask you this question, do you know of a coach? A coach for entrepreneurs who's maybe known as a master? Well, who do you think that might be? Joe went to Dan Sullivan 24 years ago, give or take, 24 years ago. Now there they are early in the days. Dan hasn't changed a bit, but Joe, doesn't quite look that way. And more recently, this picture. But Joe went to the master. I've known Joe for 25 years, and I remember the difference when he started going to the master, Dan Sullivan. There was a really big difference. And here we go. Joe went to the masters and was not afraid to write the check. That's something I recognized really early with Joe. It was like, I remember because I was in the same groups as Joe. There were all these information marketers, like, kind of even. Joe went like this. And 25 years later, a lot of them are gone, or they're not doing what. Some of them have done pretty well. Joe went to the masters. He was willing to write the check. So I don't know if Dan ever said this to Joe, but let's play with this a little bit. Joe's talking to Dan, and Dan says, let's see if we can make a great entrepreneur out of you in a year. Now, actually, it's more like 24 years now, isn't it?
Yeah, I have a different strategy.
He has a different strategy. Slow learners with money, I think is.
Committed slow learners with cash.
Committed slow learners with cash. I love it. The reality is I saw Joe different that first year and the second year and the third year and so forth. So, because this is about you, let's see if we can make a greater blank out of you in the next 2 days. Let's bring this back down to where we are now. Let's see if we can make a greater what? A couple of you, go ahead and shout out. Go ahead and put it in the chat. Let's see if we can make a greater blank out of you in the next 2 days. What is it? Anybody? A person. I like that, Linares. Very well done. Anybody else? Servant. Who said that? Gina, you are so incredible. Anybody else? One more? Writer. Let's see if we can make Ben, nice to see you. A greater writer out of you in the next 2 days. Okay, very good. Genius Network is where you find masters. I'm just going to look around. A master of negotiation. There's nobody better, right? Master of marketing. I like what you're doing with the draw shop. Master of coaching. Master of, counterintelligence. What are you doing, Casey? Masters of entrepreneurship and so forth. This is where we go to find the masters. You are all a master at something, aren't you? Okay. Therefore, I love this question. A great theologian, educator, Boyd K. Packer. I was in training with him a number of years ago, and after a day of brilliant training, he asked the question, therefore what? What does that mean? It meant, what do you feel to do? What are you going to do about it? How are you going to take action? So this isn't just, hey, here's Joe Polish's principles. It's, here's a principle. How are you going to apply this? What does that mean to you? So principle number 2, and you might write that in. If you've got that little note sheet out, you might write that in. What does this mean to me? Where can I go to find a master? What is a master I need? Where's the master in this group that I can actually connect with? Principle number 2, the halfway principle. My dad's visit to 3rd grade class. So I was 8 years old in 3rd grade, McKinley Elementary School, Santa Barbara, California. Mr. Yoshida's my teacher. I love Mr. Yoshida, one of the best teachers I've ever had. And I walked in, and Mr. Yoshida announced to our class, Timothy Paulson's dad is coming to the school today. He's going to do an art demonstration. And I was like the cool kid in the class, the cool kid in the school for the day. Wow, first of all, they were excited about getting out of class so they could go watch something. But wow, your dad's an artist? That is so cool. Wow. So we go into this large room, and I was sitting about where table 6 is relative to the room. And my dad's up front, and he's young, he's handsome, he's fun, he's engaging. He's got a blank canvas, and he starts to paint. And I'm excited. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. It was an hour long, 30 minutes in. I remember exactly how I felt, sitting where Michael is sitting, Rosbrook, right there. I remember exactly what I felt. Oh no, this isn't going well. That looks terrible. I am going to be, and I remember the feeling, I'm going to be laughed at. People are going to say, your dad's not a good artist, ha, 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 ha. By the time he finished, 30 minutes later, it was a beautiful dark seascape. And I was the cool kid for a little bit longer. And I learned something then. I watched my dad paint many paintings, and I've painted many paintings. Halfway through, Susan, halfway through, celebration of art, halfway through, doesn't look so good. So this, 39 years later, I painted this beautiful abstract painting. Isn't that something? Yep. I didn't like it either. I painted this, and I actually signed it. I stood back, I looked at it, and it was like, oh my gosh, that is a failure. I love abstract art. Ben's going to like this, the before picture better than the after picture, but that's okay. This, it was like, oh my gosh, it's not good. But then I remembered what happened to my dad halfway through. What happened in many of my paintings, same thing, right? And then there's some quotes. Here's a good one. Everything stinks until it's finished. Now that's gap thinking. I understand that. But anyway, it's a good one. Everything stinks until it's finished, right? Rosabeth Moss-Cantor, Harvard professor. Everything looks like a failure halfway through. And then this one, halfway through surgery, looks like there's been a murder in the operating room. This that's how I felt. Looks like a murder, didn't look successful. So at the time I was studying a lot about Andy Warhol, and I was admiring his art. And I said, boy, a lot of people have copied his Marilyn Monroe painting, but I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it. And this is my daughter, Courtney, who's posing with it. It's unique because some of the undercolors are coming through. It's a unique, one-of-a-kind piece of art. So I was only halfway through. Ben, don't tell me you like this, the before better, because it's going to...
Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
Well, you know, I can remove all of that. And so anyway.
Offer you a dollar.
On December 2nd, so I'm relating this to Joe, the halfway principle. So first of all, my question for you is, where have you been? Like something halfway looked like a failure, but you stayed with it and it became a huge success. That doesn't mean that all things that are failures you should continue on with, right? But you think about that. So December 2nd, 2001, I'm in Joe's office. It's on Southern Street. And he told me about a conversation he had with Dan Kennedy. Now, to put this into perspective, I had known Joe at that point for 5 years. The way I knew Joe was that he and I were both part of Dan Kennedy's Platinum group. Now, there were 18 of us. It was for totally cool marketers. I was invited to be part of that group. Joe was invited to be part of that group, 16 others. So with Dan Kennedy sitting around for 2 days, like 3 times a year. Dan pushed the dang envelope in terms of the cost. I mean, he went way beyond what anybody had ever charged before. He charged us $6,800. Let me see here. Yeah, that went forward. Charges $6,800. How could he do that? $6,800. Now, it seemed like a lot of money in 1998, 1999. And it was different than anybody else had charged. So here's Joe, he's talking to Dan Kennedy, and he says, I'm going to do a platinum group for carpet cleaners. And we're going to have 3 meetings a year, 2 days each meeting. And they're going to come together, and I'm going to charge them. Now, again, remember, how much did one of the greatest marketers in the world charge 18 of the coolest marketers in the world? $6,800. So carpet cleaners, Joe says, I'm going to charge them $10,000. This is 2001. Nobody had ever done that with any group. $10,000 for carpet cleaners. So he goes to Dan Kennedy. Oh, he says, also, I'm going to give away my $80,000 Jaguar as part of a contest that I'm going to do with these members. So he goes to get Dan Kennedy. That's what I'm going to do. And what did Dan Kennedy say? That's a good answer, but it wasn't. Don't do it. Don't do it. You're going to lose your shirt. You're going to give away your Jaguar. You're not going to get many people in the program. You'll lose your shirt. Well, what did Joe do? Joe did it anyway. So you see here, Joe, he's with his Jaguar, 327 people. He had it in the front of the room for the 3-day boot camp. And he kept talking about this. We're going to do this Platinum Plus program and this and that. Then he announced it, $10,000. And so you can go to the back of the room and sign up now. There was a stampede of 2 people. Joyce Strong, right, Eunice? Joyce Strong and Chet Rowland. They moseyed on back and signed up. Then a week later, Laura Bankston signed up. So when I'm talking to Joe, December 2nd, 2001, he tells me this story. I've launched it. He says, I could pull the plug on this thing. He says, but I have a feeling that I should do it. So that's when he asked me, would you help me with this? So December 11th, I started helping Joe with this. So 3 people, December 11th. Our first meeting was the beginning of February. By the time we got there, we had 34 people. We did some really cool marketing. And then the next year, we had 67 people in the group. The next year, 104. Joe raised the price to $12,000. The next year, we had 127, raised the price to $15,000. The next year, we had over 150. The next year, Genius Network started. 15 years later, 100X started. Had Joe quit, it looked a little messy. It looked like a failure. I'm pulling the plug. I wonder if we would be here today. I don't think we would, because Platinum Plus led to Genius Network, led to a 100K group. Joe might be out cleaning carpets somewhere during a sabbatical. Who knows, right? Boy, what a principle. So my question for you is, therefore what? Now, I've done pastoral counseling the last 10 years or so. Couples sometimes come into me and they say, we're throwing in the towel. We're getting divorced. How long have you been married? 18 years. Wow. You're not even halfway done yet. Everything looks like a failure halfway through. Right? What does this mean to you? Where have you seen this in your life? And as you move forward, how can you be aware of this? All right, so you may write that down on this form. So that's number 2. Principle number 3, unlimited. Who is this? Michael, where's Michael Fish? Oh, there's Michael. Who is this, Michael? Oh, you're close. Yes, thank you. Jackson Pollock. Anybody ever heard of Jackson Pollock? Jackson Pollock. So I've got to tell you about Jackson Pollock. There's an article written about him, Life magazine, 1948. And the question there is he the greatest American artist? Claude Buck, I told you about Claude Buck, my dad's art instructor. He was ticked off. He was ticked off. I mean, this guy's throwing paint around on the canvas. Who, the greatest American artist? Are you kidding me? Claude Buck was part of an organization, I don't know, Susan, if you've ever heard of this, Society for Sanity in Art. It started in 1946 in Chicago. And Claude Buck was all over that. He was like, because they were against this Picasso guy who was doing all this weird stuff. And they're against this Pollock guy who's doing all this weird stuff. So I was raised by a father, an artist father, who was influenced by Claude Buck. All of this stuff is rubbish. That's not art. That's how I have been painting my whole life, okay? Like realism, right? So Jackson Pollock, just for those of you who don't know, this here, oh gosh, there it is. Some people say, well, what is that? Somebody's garage floor, like a big mess? This painting, it's called Number 5, 1948. Very clever title. It sold 15 years ago for $140 million. Just to kind of put things into perspective a little bit. So I was studying his work, and I thought, man, you know what? I want to paint like that. I want to try that. So I got this 5-foot by 5-foot piece of canvas. I put it on the floor of my studio, and I got these buckets of paint, red, yellow, blue, and black. And I'm coming over here, and I'm ready to do it, and I could not. What do you mean? You just go like this, right? I couldn't. That stayed on my floor for over 3 weeks. It was like I didn't have the courage to do it. Now again, put that into perspective. I was raised, this is wrong. This is not art. This is rubbish. But one day I walked in and I grabbed the red paint and I went like, and I threw it out there. I go, oh my gosh. And it's hard to imagine. It's hard to explain this, but it was so freeing. Wow. Grab the yellow, same thing. Grab the blue, same thing. Grab the black, same thing. And it was like all of a sudden, there were no limits. And I've painted different ever since. There's no limit. I can do anything on a canvas. Don't tell me I can't do this, because I can. I've done it. So let me show you this. So this is me, I think 13 years ago. So you can kind of see it in the background. Thank you. So that's unlimited. I love the painting, I love the story, but I love what it did for me. Now, what about you? Let's talk about Joe Polish. Joe Polish has no limits. There's no restraints, right? No limits. So this here, and this may be a Banksy. If you want to achieve greatness, stop asking for permission. See, I was waiting, when I had that canvas, I was waiting for permission. Somebody needs to give me permission to do this. Baloney. Stop waiting for permission. Does Joe look for permission? Did he ask for permission when he went and said, okay, carpet cleaners, $10,000 and then up to $15,000? He didn't ask permission. He didn't limit himself. He didn't limit it when he came to Genius Network. He didn't limit it with the 100K group. And he didn't ask permission. Well, actually, he probably did ask permission to Eunice on the 1-year sabbatical. No limits. So my question is, therefore what? Where are you asking for permission or waiting for some permission? Now, some of you are going to say, well, I'm financial services, I got to get permission, I can't do stuff. Well, where can you do stuff? Where are you limited or limiting yourself in your thinking or whatever else? Therefore, what? All right, principle number 4, the perfect imperfection principle. The story of a wooden stump. My wife and I, northern mountains of Utah, we're with a bunch of friends. There's a campfire. We're camping. The fire's going down. I go looking for wood. I get this, I found this beautiful piece of wood. Pick it up. It's like a stump. And I bring it over. And as I got closer to the fire, I thought, wait a second, I don't want to burn this piece of wood. This is a beautiful piece of wood. I'm going to turn this into a piece of art. Took it into my studio, painted it all white, and then decided, okay, I want to paint something iconic on this thing. So I decided to paint the Beatles. So there's John Lennon. There is Ringo Starr. That was John Paul McCartney, this is Ringo Starr. When I got to this point, I started to wonder if it was a good piece of art. Look at that crack right down Ringo Starr's nose. I started to notice the blemishes, the imperfections, the cracks. And I said, oh no, this may not be any good. But then I finished it. So you have George Harrison, and look at all the blemishes there. Then I put the Beatles green apple label on the top. You can kind of have a difficult time reading it because of all the blemishes. And when I finished, I looked at it differently. This is a spectacular piece of art. There's my daughter, Courtney. The cracks, the blemishes, the imperfections make it more unique, make it more beautiful, make it more remarkable. It's one of my favorite pieces of art these days. Now, Joe Polish. Here he is with his mother and father. There's little Joe and his brother, Tony. Shortly after this picture was taken, Joe's mother died. His father raised him. His father was a good man. I knew his father, met his father, but he didn't know how to raise kids. He didn't know how to raise two sons. Things were dysfunctional. So Joe grows up and he becomes a drug addict. Now, this is what Eunice saw in high school every day. She said Joe would walk down the hallways. He was stoned. He was always smiling at everybody, this and that. But he became a drug addict, didn't he? There's some blemishes there. There's some imperfections there. There's some cracks there. But this here, Joe's vulnerability about his blemishes, his cracks, his imperfections changed everything for him. I observed this. When I first met Joe, he wasn't nearly as open about all of these cracks, all of these blemishes, all of these imperfections. But later, when he did, people were flocking to him. And they flock to him today. Artists for addicts. It is like art as a force for good. What about vulnerability as a force for good? What about this? Akira did this beautiful documentary, again for Artists for Addicts, Genius Recovery. Joe's using his cracks, his blemishes, his imperfections to change things, to impact people, to change the global conversation about addiction, right? Miracle Morning. I think that, is Anna David in this room somewhere? Or is she here? Okay, Anna David and Hal Elrod.
I'm here.
Oh, good. Glad to see you. Glad to see you. So therefore, what? I'm just wondering about your cracks, your imperfections, your blemishes. How can you turn them to good? How can you use them to serve and to help others? How can you celebrate them? Like the piece of art that I had with all the cracks and blemishes, it's a remarkable piece of art because of those blemishes. Okay, this middle. So this is worth 1.5. I said 5.5 principles. This is worth 1.5 because it's so important. Quick story. So 2002, we're in a new office in McClintock, and I'm working in an office, and Joe comes in. He's moving quick. Are you Larry?
I am.
Larry, good to see you.
Good to see you.
He's moving down, he runs down the hallway like this. He's running around, Joe Polish, in his office. So I'm sitting in this office, and I kind of come out and I look, go, what the heck is Joe doing? Running back and forth. He's looking at all the doors. And I said, Joe, what are you doing? He said, oh, I just bought a door, and I'm trying to figure out where the door is going to go. And I said to Joe, we have doors. What do we need a door for? And he says, oh, well, come out here with me. So I go out with Joe, and when I got outside, there's a man holding a door, and that's when I started to understand. The man was obviously, I don't know where he got the door, but anyway, the man was destitute. The man, you could see that he had some difficulties. He was a man in need and in want, you might say. And that's when it occurred to me. Joe doesn't want or need a door, but he wanted to help someone in need. Joe and I never spoke about that afterwards. It wasn't like he said, hey, I did that to help the guy out. I just knew. And that's the middle. That's the 1.5, 150%. That's what everything else emanates from Joe's heart. He's a giver. Write that in the middle of that page. Giver. So when you look at this, why did Joe go to the masters? So that he could give better to carpet cleaners and to others. Halfway, why did he continue on and do the Platinum Plus program? Because he wanted to be a giver. He wanted to do more. Why is it that Joe is unlimited? Because he wants to give. So all of these things come back to the middle, right there. It's Joe's heart, a giver. So my question for you is, first of all, life gives to the giver. You see this? I think the first words in that book, Anna David would know better than I think they are, I want to give to you. So my question is, therefore what? How can you be a giver? So I'm going to bring this all together now and relate it to what we're doing the next 2 days. How the 5.5 principles can help you get more out of the next 2 days. Genius Network is filled with masters, including you. So go to the masters. Don't be shy. Masters of health, masters of marketing, masters of entrepreneurship, masters of everything here. Even if things look a little messy during this 2 days, don't bail. Don't bail halfway through. If you're in a breakout session, it's like, well, this is a little messy. It's like, I'm going to go to the restroom, or I'm going to turn off my camera, or whatever. Don't do that. Don't ask permission. There are no limits for you over the next 2 days. And then be vulnerable. Be vulnerable. And how can you be more of a giver at this Genius Network annual event than you've ever been before? Those are the 4 plus 1.5, 5.5 principles that all come back down to this. How can you be a giver? So here's Joe Polish. There he is standing in front of a really cool painting. He is the man. We're all here because of him initially, right? That is the Joe Polish Success Blueprint and the 5.5 principles. So on the next slide, in closing, I'm just going to ask you to all say, when I say 1, 2, 3, on 3, I'll read this as loud as you can. Online, we want to hear you, okay? So here it is. 1, 2, 3, let's go!
Let's go!
Okay, welcome. Thank you.
Okay, I hope you found that video awesome and useful. So if you want to get a free copy of my book, I want you to click here. And if you want to watch some more videos that'll be useful and awesome, click here. Go ahead. You're over here. Do it now. Come on. Thank you. Watch them.